Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, as we continue to mark 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children, today we've chosen to focus on the different forms of abuse because many are familiar with the overt abuse, be it the physical abuse or verbal. In those cases, one can recognize that they're being abused. But there's also the subtle, very pervasive form of abuse, the emotional or psychological, which could be in the form of gaslighting. I think many might be familiar with this term of gaslighting, where an abuser, through manipulation, attempts to sow self-doubt and confusion in a victim's mind. There's also financial abuse. Let's just take a closer look at these forms of abuse. Now, on the first graphic, we look at the examples. We look at emotional abuse. Now, this one isn't too far off from psychological abuse. It's the very subtle kind, which many may struggle to recognize. It's the humiliation, the insults, acts of jealousy and possessiveness, which some may easily confuse with an individual who's deeply invested in an intimate relationship or in love. Not the case, as experts have shared, it's emotional abuse. We move to the second one, that's physical abuse. Now, when we look at physical abuse, it's the one easily recognizable. It's intentional bodily injury, the operative word being intentional. There is absolutely no setting in society where an individual can physically harm another. And if you find yourself as a victim, attempting to explain or make excuses for why you were physically harmed, that on its own speaks of a deeper problem worth addressing. We then move to financial abuse. Now, financial abuse, also known as economic abuse, involves an individual using finances to control another, be it by preventing a partner from going to work, which in turn leads to that partner becoming dependent on the other, which could see their voice silenced or suppressed on issues in the home at times, given that they depend on the other partner. But sometimes an abuser may control how the victim spends their very own salary. So financial insecurity, it must be stated, is among the top reasons victims stay in abusive relationships, a big cause for concern. We then move to child abuse. Child abuse is another one that's very self-explanatory. This is all forms of abuse directed at children, be it emotional, physical, or sexual molestation. We move then to sexual harassment. Sexual harassment, this specific term refers to sexual contact or behavior that occurs without explicit consent of the victim. Some forms of sexual assault include attempted rape, fondling or unwanted touching, or even suggestive conversations, which could be inappropriate. It could even be happening in the workspace or any other space, but most important, it's something that you haven't consented to. We then move to rape. This one is all too familiar for many, unfortunately, where this can be considered non-consensual sex. This one we even heard with the stats that we saw, that it is quite a pervasive problem in the country. We then move to graphic 2. We look now at the common signs of abuse from a partner, starting off with keeping track of everything you do. This one can easily be again confused with a partner who loves a person, which is not the case. It's obsessive conduct, but many would confuse it with a partner who's very committed in the relationship. Insist that you reply immediately to their texts or emails and calls. Again, there could be those when speaking among friends stating that perhaps this is a lover who's invested in the relationship and would want to keep tabs on everything, be it your texts, your emails. Very problematic conduct, and that is a red flag on its own. Demands to know your password. Even in relationships, there is a degree of having your own personal space. You are permitted to have passwords unless this is something that is communicated, but it could be viewed as a red flag as well. Humiliate you in front of others. Again, another form of a red flag. This is where there's demeaning conduct which seeks to also belittle you in the presence of others. May act jealous, accuse you of cheating. Another manipulative conduct. Now this, where one acts jealous or accuses you of cheating, is possibly to have the victim consistently assuring them and staying clear of any conduct that might make them feel insecure. So you find yourself in the trap of constantly assuring a person who acts jealous but might not necessarily be jealous. Insults your appearance, intelligence or interests. Again, this is to deal with the confidence of the individual. It is systematic, where somebody seeks to deal and bruise the ego, the confidence of an individual, who then finds it far difficult to leave. Another red flag. They may hate you, they may hurt you, pardon me, physically or sexually. This one is self-explanatory. So most certainly, these are the common signs of abuse from a partner. And some may think it's easily identifiable, but not so much in certain instances where people would even have to come and tell an individual that these are forms of abuse. It's not love, as some might think. We then move to where to get help. SAPS Crime Stop, the number 08 600 10 111. Gender-Based Violence Command Center, their number is 0800 428 428. You move to Stop Gender Violence Helpline, their telephone number 0800 150 150, or you could SMS them. It's *120 *7867 hash. There's also Family and Marriage Society of South Africa, also known as FAMSA. Their number is 011 975 7107. And of course, we have the Childline, their number 08000 55 555. The National Crisis Line is 086 132 2322. We also have the South African National Council for Child Welfare. That's 011 339 5741. Now, beyond these, you can talk to a friend also, a colleague, a boss, a pastor, because the reality is that abuse thrives in silence, in secrecy, the feeling of shame. Resist it, speak up, transfer that shame to the abuser. It's not yours to carry. Well, we'll continue to have this conversation throughout these 16 days of activism on Full View, and hopefully in our little way, we'll make a difference to end the scourge.